So the top 247 rankings were released earlier today, and I want to talk about Oklahoma players in particular in this segment, and all that's coming up after the bumper.
Don't be cornering me. Hold up. Time. You gotta help me with that corner shit.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. So it's college football related, sports related. We have a good time. Today, I want to talk about the top 247 rankings release, for which we expected to see some movement, but not a whole hell of a lot of movement because there hadn't been any camps to evaluate anybody yet. That said, take into account some enhanced huddle film watching and the way that offers are being doled out, the Rankings Council released the latest update to the top 247. That is not the 247 Sports Composite. The 247 Sports Composite is industry generated among ESPN rivals and 247's rankings to come up with basically an average score of what that ranking is. So when we talk about Corey Foreman, we talk about the number one player in the 247 Sports Composite. He's the number two player in the top 247, basically flip-flopping with JT Tuimoloau. Now, one of the things that I want to do in this particular upload is focus on what the Oklahoma players and Oklahoma leans really look like. And the first guy on this list as perhaps an Oklahoma lean is Caleb Williams, who his ranking didn't change. His nor Emeka Egbuka's or Smail Munden's. All of those guys stayed right at 98 in the way that they are ranked, with the highest ranking in this class going 99. And Williams sits right there at number 6 in the top 247, Egbuka at number 7. What's titillating about this is both of these guys have Oklahoma in their top 3 and top 4 respectively. Egbuka is widely to be considered a Ohio State lean, or an Ohio State lean. And Williams, of course, OU. But I think that prospect of them playing together and being a part of the same class could be really intriguing and really enticing, right? Because Egbuka putting Oklahoma in his top 4 caught a few people off guard. But most folks would tell you that they would bet money on Caleb Williams to Oklahoma. Anything is possible. I mean, Maryland still very much believes it's in the mix, even after picking up Talia Tagovailoa in the transfer portal last weekend. And of course, Lance Lejeune is already there. But playing with Raheem Jarrett, who's a year ahead of Williams, could be appealing, as could playing with Egbuka and the guys that are already at Oklahoma, which has had one of the most dynamic offenses in football over the past decade. Now, moving even further down this list, a couple of guys that Oklahoma is interested in, but perhaps might lose out on: Tommy Brockmeyer and Travion Henderson, of course, Ohio State commit there. Nolan Rucci, who most folks have Penn State or perhaps even Clemson there, and Amarius Mims. Most folks got Georgia there, but we'll see. Moving down the list, Donovan Edwards is interesting in that he is, well, he's a top running back out of the state of Michigan, and I know Oklahoma would like to get involved, but we'll see, right? The Tristan Lee factor here, one of the top offensive tackles in the draft. Matter of fact, I believe the second highest rated offensive tackle in this class, behind J.C. Latham, who many folks would tell you they believe is an Ohio State lean, but Oklahoma is very much in play for him the way that they are in play for Emeka Egbuka. L.J. Johnson is really a guy that Oklahoma wants in the worst way coming out of Texas. 95 is his rating. And if you could get him and Kamara Wheaton in the same class, man, would you not love that if you're Oklahoma, especially after losing out on the Jace McClellan sweepstakes when Nick Saban swooped in late into Alito and swept out with Jace McClellan in the early signing period. Now, Mason Smith is considered LSU lean, but since his best friend and guy he wants to play with, Corey Foreman, is considered USC lean, maybe USC comes up with two of the better players in this 247. Savion Byrd is also interesting here because SMU looks like they're in the lead on that, but Oklahoma is very much in play for him in the way that they're in play for Kamara Wheaton. And again, it's the difference between really getting a guy that is absolutely amazing to go with another guy and blowing up your class, because if you're Oklahoma and you can put together a class that includes Caleb Williams, Emeka Egbuka, Kamara Wheaton, and Savion Byrd, you're doing something right, along with perhaps L.J. Johnson. But when you get down the list, you really got to get into the 50s before you get into the highest rated commit in the top 247 for Oklahoma, and that would be Cody Jackson, who was also the first player into this 2021 class for Lincoln Riley with a rating of 95. Clayton Smith is not too far behind him with a rating of 94 and one of the top players in, well, his position, and he moved up 4 spots, which is a bigger jump than you would expect at this time. I mean, Cody Jackson moved up just 2 spots. And we know that Clayton Smith at 6'4", 220 pounds is going to play some edge for Oklahoma and really help solidify that front line. And that's a position that could be a star player in Alex Grinch's scheme, that rush in. I expect to hear good things. And you continue to go down, you get into the 90s when you get into one of the top rated players in the state. Well, really in the top 247, the top player in the state, Ethan Downs, and number 2 player in the 247 sports composite. With a rating of 94, he went down a spot. Don't know what for or why, but he's right behind Jake Garcia, who is committed to play at SC. And then Evan Pryor is in this top 100, just kind of barely in there. He's committed to Ohio State. And of course, Kendall Daniels rounding out this basically top 105 with a ranking of 103rd in the top 247. Also considered to be an Oklahoma lean, but we'll see, as his final 4 include Clemson, LSU, A&M, and of course, OU. You're in good shape if you're Oklahoma right now. You would like to have all of these kids in the boat, because that could certainly put you into a top 5 class. You get Caleb Williams, you get Emeka Egbuka, you get Kamara Wheaton, Savion Byrd, you get LJ Johnson, and perhaps you get to throw Christian Leary in there as well, who's going to announce on June 6th. Yeah, that's a hell of a class there. Even as Ohio State is putting together an all-timer, Oklahoma would probably be in the running for putting together one of its all-timers, because I can't see how that class wouldn't finish inside the top 5. And Oklahoma hasn't had like that sort of a finish in 10 years, quite honestly. I mean, even that 2019 class with Spencer Rattler, Theo Weiss, Jaden Hazelwood, and the like was ranked number 6 in a year in which Texas ranked number 3. I still think Texas doing the least with the most is the story here. So that's how it shakes out in the top 247. I understand if you feel like some guys shouldn't have moved up, some guys shouldn't have moved down, or you can even make the argument that you don't expect or need to see a rankings release in May when nobody's been able to camp. But I didn't make that decision, but I'm happy to see the list come out because it gave us something to talk about. It also kind of sets us up for what I expect to be a whirlwind of a summer with lots of commitments as we continue to figure out if, how, when college football is even going to play or be played. Because right now, as I am really making this video, the NCAA Division I Council is set to vote on whether or not they're going to allow student athletes to return to campuses where, state laws have allowed that on June 1st, with the dead period maybe even being extended through June 30th. And I know that Lincoln Riley's on record calling this ridiculous that we want to get kids back on June 1st. But I submit to you that if Bob Bowlesby and the NCAA say that you can return kids, you're probably going to see his kids come back, because you don't want to give anybody a competitive advantage in this thing. As a matter of fact, Texas has already returned its coaching staff to basically working together. And while you're going to really go through this physical distancing and you're going to go through protocols that involve testing and taking precautions, perhaps like using face masks, I would not be surprised to find out that people feel like they are going to do this and do it well because everybody wants to play football. Right? And at a time when coaches get to flex and say, look, your spot could be gone, take it now, we're seeing kids are much more willing to pull the trigger. Also could see an epic run of decommitments with a college football season that might be played in September, at the beginning of September. And if we see an epic run of decommitments, then it's the wild, wild west all over again. And the rankings, they are going to do that thing that they have done now just drastically, because people are going to get offers that didn't get offers before. And you might see a guy like Ethan Downs be heavily pursued by a Texas or an Alabama, and then people would really start freaking out, right? So I'm excited to see what this looks like because I get to cover this stuff. All right, that is it for me. Deuces.